So the second part of this particular lesson is on some other basic vocabulary. So let's start with the word angle bisector. Okay, an angle bisector, by definition, is a ray that divides an angle into two congruent angles. So if I look at a picture, it's going to look something like this. So if my original angle is angle ABC, and if I bisect it, again, I'm going to split it into congruent angles. So these two angles formed are going to be congruent. So in general, angle ABD is going to be congruent to angle DBC. Okay, you could also state that angle ABD is half of the big angle, which is angle ABC, things like that. You could also say the big angle, angle ABC, is 2 times a smaller angle, which would be like angle ABD. Those are different conclusions you can make knowing that an angle is bisected. So let's just throw in some numbers. So let's pretend the big angle ABC was 50 degrees. Then we could conclude that the two smaller angles, since it's split into 2 equal pieces, are going to be 25. Again, I would figure that out by taking 50 divided by 2 to give me 25. So that's angle bisector. The other term that we're going to talk about today is going to be midpoint of a segment. Okay, so midpoint of a segment is a point that divides a segment into 2 congruent segments. So an angle bisector divides an angle into 2 congruent segments. A midpoint divides a segment, an angle bisector divides an angle into 2 congruent angles. A midpoint divides a segment into 2 congruent segments. So if I would draw a picture, so if I have segment AB, if point M is the midpoint, that means that AM and MB are the same length. So if you refresh your memory back to Algebra 1, when you did the midpoint formula. So when you have the midpoint formula, if you have 2 points, let's pretend A is at x1, y1, and B is at x2, y2. To find the midpoint of segment AB, you're going to average the x's and average the y's. So it's going to be x1 plus x2 divided by 2, and then y1 plus y2 divided by 2. So it's the average of the x's and the average of the y's. So let's make up an example. Let's pretend one endpoint is at 2, 3, and the other endpoint is at 5, 7, and I want to find the midpoint of the segment. So again, to find the midpoint, I'm going to average the x's and then average the y's. So my x's are going to be the 2 and the 5. Remember, an ordered pair is x comma y. So I'm going to take 2 plus 5 and divide it by 2. And then for my y coordinate, I'm going to average the y's, which are my 3 and my 7. So 3 plus 7 divided by 2. So for the x coordinate, 2 plus 5 is 7. 7 divided by 2 is 3.5. And then for my y's, 3 plus 7 is 10, and 10 divided by 2 is 5.